Well, let's get into it. So today we got Nate Prater, right? I said that right?
That is correct.
Heck yeah. So that's a good start.
No
so we got Nate from Streetcar Bragging Rights. He's been a promoter now for the past couple of years, and he's doing huge events already. Been trying to get to one. Eventually I'll make it. I'm kind of bad about that. I have no ability to plan ahead more than like a month. So I always end up screwing myself over, but I'll make it to one this year. It's on my list for 2024.
I feel like we've had you on the list for like just about all the stuff we've done, except for maybe the first one, and then you just messaged me and you're like, "Sorry, man."
I know.
I can't get there.
I'm the worst about that. But this year, I plan to make it to a few, and you guys do them at awesome tracks up on the East Coast, like some of the best, like middle East Coast tracks that there is. You're now incorporating with Donald Long with his stuff. Starting to kind of branch out to what I would say is new age events. Yeah,
I mean that's we've had a big draw with a lot of the overdrive stuff and everything here lately too. So we're bringing out a lot of the newer model vehicles and everything, but pretty much our focus is street cars. And I know there's a lot of other events that they're titled that way. But it's you get there and like, this car doesn't drive on the street. This car doesn't have a tag. This car is probably not insured. So, that was kind of a big focus of our events whenever we started was, it's tagged, registered, insured street cars. So,
yeah, but I also mean new age events where you're incorporating stuff that a lot of people seem to just not think about, because drag racing's, in my opinion, a lot of these events are stuck in 20 years ago.
I agree.
And they don't really realize they need to evolve with the times, because the same event year after year is not going to attract new people every year.
It's definitely a big one.
I don't like to, not disparaging any events. It's just how it is. Culture changes, people's attention changes, and you've added things like the burnout stuff, and you're trying things that will hopefully incorporate new eyes.
Yeah. So the reality of it is we learned pretty quickly. We're obviously very new to this, but spectators is what pays the bills when it comes to drag racing promoting. Bringing a few hundred cars in is great. Get quality cars, awesome. But until you put asses in seats, you are not making any money. You're not breaking even. So what do you have to do to get those guys there other than just seeing cars go down a track? That's what we try to focus on. Stuff is little as T-shirt cannon things, fireworks displays, inflatables for kids. Our burnout contest that we just had back in December, we had Santa Claus out there. It's just it's a lot of little stuff like that where we're also trying to draw people out to the track that may not normally come to the track. There's got to be an entertainment aspect of doing these types of things to get people that would normally not go out to your racetrack. We're seeing it more and more here lately. Tracks are closing left and right. And like you said, I think a lot of these places are kind of stuck in what they've been doing, how they've been operating, and I don't think it works.
Yeah, I think there's that dangerous phrase of well, that's how I've always done it.
Yeah.
And since you're a relatively new promoter, at least in my mind, I don't know if that's correct.
Definitely very new. Very new.
I didn't know if I was going out on a limb there, and you're like, well, I've done this 10 years. It just started.
So Streetcar Bragging Rights itself started in 2022. We had our first event in March 2022. So we did that one, and it basically transpired, and I hate to say it this way because I'm not in any way trying to throw any event under the bus, but we would go around to a lot of events, our small group of friends, and we bitched a lot. We would go to these races, and, we would get past first or second round, and then because things just weren't ran right or organized properly, we're splitting pots. We're splitting a couple $100 after the second round. We would critique everything that, the staff would do, the promoters would do. And we finally got to a point where it was, we've said this 100 times, but it's put up or shut up. We got to quit bitching about it.
Yeah.
Or if we're going to do this better, let's try it. And we sat down one day and was like, we're just going to do this. So March of 2022, we had our first event. It was a single day event. I believe we had 9 race classes. And It went great. You know, our car count was great. We had people from all over the country. We definitely kind of had expectations of our first year. It was going to be more of a local event. We had people driving 10, 12 hours.
What track was that one at? Was that
Carolina Dragway.
Carolina
so that is our
Dragway.
home track. You know, we live in Augusta, Georgia. Carolina Dragway, we basically live on, you know,
It's interesting to say Augusta, Georgia would be Carolina
Dragway.
Dragway.
So we live in Augusta. The state line is South Carolina, Georgia, right there. So the track, we go over the river, and we're 15 minutes away from the track. So we did have our first event there. Went off without a hitch.
Did you model the rules after some other stuff that you liked already? Or did you kind of duplicate rules? I think people often worry about that in promoting. Like, they think you have to have your own rule set. But ideally, racers don't want every event to have its own rule set.
Very true. So
like, copy another rule set.
Yeah, no, that was a tough one. We spent a lot of time on rules. We probably spent a month trying to come up with a name, first of all, of just the event itself. The rule set, we looked into just any streetcar event that we could find. I mean, we were looking into FL2K rules, Texas 2Ks, World Cup, anything that we could find. We took a bunch of people's stuff and we kind of just picked it apart.
The TX2K rules.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was any streetcar rules there.
Yeah, and you know, that's a big one. You know, we also knew that we couldn't have a lot of rules. You know, a first-year event, we're trying to get as many cars there as possible. If you have these classes that have, you know, a rule book this thick of each class, especially starting off first year, you're not going to get a lot of cars. So a lot of stuff was, let's make it as loose as possible. Let's get people in these classes. Let's get feedback after, and then we'll start tightening it down from there. And essentially, you know, we're coming up on our third event. It'll be at Carolina Dragway again. Three-day event this time around. But that's what we did. We actually put out a survey after our first race, and the survey was pushed towards the spectators and was pushed towards the racers. And depending on which one you were, you took a different survey, and it asked these questions. We wanted to know what we did well. We wanted to know what you didn't like. You know, we wanted every little detail that you could give us, and you know, the feedback that we got was overwhelmingly good, and we were really surprised by that because as racers, you know, it's easy to go to an event and say, this was wrong, this was wrong.
Yeah.
After doing that, we were able to start tightening down classes. We were able to find out that, you know, people wanted different classes added. People were, you don't need this class. So that was a big one. You know, listening to the racers, listening to everybody, finding out what people wanted. And we stay very open even, you know, now. We want to know what people want, the racers want, what we can do to change, make things better. And it's been, what we're at now is just been a working of everybody's, you know, feedback.
Yeah. And promoters need to kind of work together on these rules as well. I mean, I've talked with, you know, Justin and Chase with Streetcar Takeover, and Victor, we've talked about rules a lot and how they change and how they try to slow down classes or speed up classes. And you look at like somebody like John Sears, who does his rules for Ultra Street LDR,
Yep.
and once they add the rule book this thick, the car count starts to dwindle a little bit, the cost of entry starts to go up, and that's where it gets really tough. The street car is like this unlimited open class that we get to race in, but then that's the double-edged sword of you end up with what is basically a Pro 275 car.
Yep,
with a radiator. Yeah, and a tag, a radiator this big that's actually filled with lead instead of an actual radiator.
It's tough. I mean, that was a big one our first year. You know, we saw it in our all-motor class very specifically. You know, we would have what in our minds when we were making the rules were these newer gen cars that were all-motor from the factory, and we're going to come out, and this was going to be our class, and it was going to be a high 9-second class, low 10. And then what we didn't realize making rules is, you know, there's some guys that would fit the rules that could come out and run bottom 8s, and you've got 90% of your field back here, and then you got 1 or 2 guys up here.
Yeah.
And it's tough because, you know, you don't want to disqualify those guys. You don't want to tell them, like, hey, you built a fast car and you're getting penalized for it. But also, you're trying to keep a car count and you're trying to keep things competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's all around. You want the racers to know that it's competitive. You want them to be able to show up thinking they have a chance. But also, from a spectator standpoint, you don't want to sit in the stands. You want to watch close races. And, you know, that's something that it's tough. That's rules we talk about all the time. Out of all the stuff that we do throughout the year with the events, making rules for any class is the toughest thing we do.
100%. And I look at it as a racer standpoint and talk with promoters all the time about rules. And I think a lot of racers don't realize just because you built your car in a specific way doesn't mean you deserve to fit a class.
Yep.
It doesn't matter to me what you did to build your car in your certain way. You didn't you have to build to the rules. And just because you built a big block with a NA big block that can go bottom 8s or whatever it is, a Honda that can go bottom 8s on nitromethane, doesn't mean you can fit an all motor class in the spirit of the rules, because you got to use that word too, in the spirit of the class.
That's a weird one for us. Stuff like that is something that we also tried to avoid. So we tried to avoid gray areas in any of the rules, because a lot of rule sets and a lot of classes, there is so much gray area. That was one thing that we were very particular on. We wanted things to be black and white. We wanted when the rules came out, they didn't get changed. Even if we made a mistake to a degree, if rules come out and we've had one person buy a tech card, we will not change the rules.
Locked in.
It's locked in. And this is, it goes to our favor for the fact that the racers respect it. But there has been times where, in the last couple of years, where we've made rules and went, wow, we really shouldn't have done that. But they were out, tech cards were purchased, and it is what it is at this point. We'll get feedback going forward. We'll make changes, going next year. But once the rules are in, they're there. That's why we have a real hard time. We added our first fuel stipulation rule this year.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one, because how do you tech that? We know how to tech that.
Yes,
do
but
you
no.
tech that? Are we?
You can technically, but the labor to do that is huge, and the machines to do that aren't exactly. Because I assume you're talking about methanol.
Yep.
Okay, so methanol in a streetcar class. We've talked about this many a times in my friend group, and it's probably the same conversation you have. Do you tech after every single pass, every single car?
Are you at their trailers while they're fueling? Are we taking, oil sample? I know, World Cup was taking oil samples in their all motor class this year, and they were sending them off the laps.
What percentage of my ethanol can be methanol before it's methanol?
Before you're crossing a line.
Yeah, so if I put a 50-50 blend, is that methanol?
So that was tough for us. We added that rule, and it was probably the first time that we added what we call, it's not a gray area rule, but it's left up to the racers, in my opinion, to be honest with us and to be honest with themselves. And that's tough, because we're racing, we're competing, everybody's looking for an edge. So with that one, we added it. We're still discussing how we're going to go about it, what we're going to do this year with it. We also don't want to be, those guys that are sitting around and taking fuel samples in between rounds.
It just doesn't make sense for a time standpoint of a one-day race, where if your race is one day and you're trying to qualify and race in the same day, Streetcar Takeover does this. And how do you manage with manpower to do that?
It's possible, but hopefully we don't have to, get to that point with it. So we'll see.
Well, even like M5, M1, there's like levels of fuel.
There's differences with it, it's.
But then, because we can talk about the rule aspect of it, I always just think if it's visible, like has to have an intercooler, can't have a front-mounted fuel cell. Like, I don't care about doors really or any windows or anything like that. I would think minimum weight is more important, because
things that you can
like a GTR has carbon fiber doors and aftermarket windows and still weighs 4,000 pounds. That's where it gets weird. Like Hellcats, I've seen that too. They're all stripped down as light as possible, and they're 1,000 pounds heavier than a Fox body. So how do you argue that without it becoming a Fox body class?
We're learning that minimum weights in classes are a big one. So we've, up until this year, our heavyweight class was the only class that we had that would go across the scales.
What was the weight on that?
4,200 pounds. That's with driver, and we allow up to 200 pounds of ballast.
Do you allow Mustangs in that class?
Yes, if you can fit it, and it's if you can fit with a heavier driver, and you're not going over 200 pounds of ballast, we don't want somebody coming out and loading their car up with 400 or 500 pounds of ballast. On top of you just really trying to bend the rules there. It gets dangerous whenever you start adding that type of ballast because
NHRA only techs cages to a weight and an ET. So once you get to a certain weight, your cage cert is no longer relevant. So you kind of have to balance with that too. But I think TX2K did that where they did no Mustangs in the heavyweight class. Even if they fit,
I saw that.
It was just an easier answer to do no Mustangs.
We added a weight to our all-motor class this year, and we got a lot of gripe about it. That was new. We went up to 3,400 pounds for our all-motor class, and
even for like a 4-cylinder.
Yes,
just
so
across the board.
Across the board, and the thing is, with our all-motor class, we haven't seen a 4-cylinder entry yet, and obviously, if that's something that we work up to, then we'll have to look at those rules again. But currently, it's a lot of newer Mustangs, it's a lot of newer Camaros and stuff, and these guys, we've had some, come out. We've had some 2,400 pound Fox bodies get in the class, and they destroy the class and they run it over. And again, it's tough because we're essentially punishing those guys for fitting the rules the first time around.
Well, what happens is a nitrous car just doesn't put a nitrous bottle in.
Exactly.
And suddenly it's an all-motor car.
And that's exactly what happens. And
I think they're so sneaky.
And it sucks because, these, there's literally guys in particular that have showed up to our races and done well at our races. And we are technically now saying, hey, you no longer fit this class. And it's like I said, making rules is tough. And it's the worst part of everything because we piss people off in the process. We don't want to do that, but we also, like I said, we want to keep the classes as close as possible, as competitive as possible, and when that starts happening, you got to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, and you have to base it off the engine combo, not as much like in World Cup they deal with this, where they have to base it off the engine combo, not how fast that particular car may have went that's trying to get in and trying to fight the rules a little bit and push back on things. I'm sure you get messages like, hey, if you just lighten up on this one spot, I can get in.
Get them all the time.
Yeah, I did that to you, so.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. But I was more speaking for the community of my engine combo.
And it was something that we learned, and as new promoters, and the thing is, if you're in the race community and
I'll take any opportunity to bitch. So just to lay that out there.
If you're in the race community and, you grow up focused and driving one or two types of cars, you don't know a lot about others. You don't know, in your situation, I didn't know a lot of guys use nitrous to spool y'all's turbos. And finding out, and looking more into it, I actually, I spoke with you a little bit more about it, that it's not really a matter of you're using nitrous to make more power. It's, you don't really have much of a choice. Like you're having to spool your turbo.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where we looked at it, was like, and we did make that change. But it, like I said, whenever you reached out, I was like, nope, sorry, man.
Yeah. No, and I get it. The rule that I was talking about was there was no dual power adders.
No dual power adders.
And most classes, they say no dual power adders for V8s. You can have nitrous on a 6-cylinder or a 4-cylinder because to run with the V8s, it allows the playing field to be a little more level. And that's kind of the only thought behind it. And that's not a difficult thing to tech in any aspect. So that's why it kind of works for rules, because there's no 2J car without nitrous that's running as fast as these Coyotes or LSs. So it just made sense in that aspect. And I didn't even run that race. I just was letting you know for a rule standpoint that this is something that most people may not realize.
And you weren't the only one that reached out. And that was, whenever, especially if we have more than one person, it's like, okay, we need to look into this. We need to go, okay, where is this something that we need to fix? Because there is outliers. We have people that will reach out to us that will be very special cases where it is not across the board. They want their combo to work for that class. And sometimes it's not fair to do that.
Yeah, the guy that built the car that doesn't fit any class,
Yep.
that suddenly wants to fit a class. I mean, I've seen that as well. I've been in drivers' meetings where people are arguing about a certain car that fits, but everybody kind of wants it out. But then everybody wants to be an outlaw racer where they have no rules.
Yep.
Until somebody comes in and kicks everybody's teeth in.
Yeah, that was another big one with us when we started everything. You know, we would go to races, and I tell people the story all the time. I showed up to a race that I spent literally hours the night before, stayed up late, putting in my back seats, and I had an Audi S5 at the time, and putting the seats in. I mean, it took all night. It wasn't just a matter of just, you know, clicking them in. It was a process. You know, getting all the seat belts back in properly.
Yeah.
And I show up to this race because rear seats were required, and we get there and there's a couple of people without back seats, and I end up running a guy that didn't have back seats, didn't fit the rules, but because they wanted a car count that day, which I get, you know, we understand that aspect of it. He was allowed to race. I lost the race, you know, first round. And it's tough because you're like, man, I did what I was supposed to do. I showed up to this race to fit the rules that y'all put on a flyer, y'all sent out, and now I'm here, and now I lose to a guy who y'all just want him to run because, well, you need cars in the class.
Yeah, your side of the street was clean. You could have potentially went on, but like you said, no car count, which would have probably meant the payout would have sucked anyways.
Yep.
You know, if you kick those 4 cars out, suddenly you got half a field. Suddenly car count's gone. Suddenly payout sucks. Suddenly the next event doesn't happen. It kind of is that snowball effect.
Catch-22 with all the stuff. I mean, it's all very we're learning a lot as we go.
Yeah. And that's where it's tough too, because racers love finding the gray area, and if it doesn't say you need all that stuff, they're gonna find it.
If anybody's going to find a gray area, it is a racer in any sport. You know, but I mean that's all of us. We're all looking for that competitive edge on what we can and cannot do. Some of us push it a little further than what's needed, but
yeah, I mean, like the thing with nitrous cars running up to no time or to no power at our events, like that makes it tough for anybody else because nitrous cars are usually pretty light. I've seen James Tall did that once where he took the nitrous off his 240 and suddenly it was this car with fender exit exhaust in an NA car, in an NA class, and you know, you could beat everybody like that. But then you have the transmission rules, which the overdrive class started to become a thing down here. Victor did like 1 or 2 of them, and then it got completely beat up by Jim Braun in a Mustang.
Yep.
And then
all it takes is one person. I mean,
yes.
We see that with a lot of stuff, and then you got to start drawing back rules. Oddly enough, we just sold out our first class. You know, we're 4 months out from our Streetcar Bragging Rights event in May, but the first class to sell out was the no time overdrive class. So we have a 32 car field that, you know, we sold out, I think, probably 3 or 4 days ago, and everybody's locked in. And we've talked about it, kind of blew my mind. It was not the class that I thought was going to go first. But and of all things, that's a Thursday night, you know, this class, and it's
no time overdrive.
No time overdrive.
What were the majority of the cars? Were they Mustangs? Were they newer body style?
Majority, yeah.
That's whatever S550s, probably with the 6L.
I'd say that's probably 50% of that class.
Yeah.
There's multiple CTSVs though. We've got some Hellcats stuff.
How stiff are you on no time? Because that's the other thing is like our Florida no time. One of the classes is open. Like I can get in it even though I've showed times. One of them, if you showed times in the last, 9 months to a year, you're not getting in the class.
So this class in particular is a no time, no ticket class, but we are not restricting it if you've showed times. Yeah. We've gone through that. We have a small tire shootout that's also going to be happening Friday of our event. That class itself is a no time shown this calendar year. So January 1st to May 10th, you can't show times and get in that class.
Yeah, because some of those guys get pretty.
Yeah, we tried that. We did that last year. Was the first time we introduced a small tire class, and we had, I think, 2 class cars sign up. You know, these guys that have ran at Donald Long's events.
Yep.
As soon as a flyer went up with them on it, we just getting messages left and right, like, hey, what's going on with this? And it was a new world for us. You know, that wasn't something that we've done before. And it was a quick learning curve. Like, yeah, you're going to run off all your no-time guys because you let this one car in. Yep. And it doesn't matter how slow or fast that time car's been. They do not care. If that thing is
most no-time guys have been slow, and they just are hiding that.
So the overdrive shootout, though, it is, you can show times. We tried that to where we opened that up to where it was going to be very similar, and we don't typically get a car count for that. So we've also found out there's a lot of no-time guys, especially in our area, that are no-time overdrive guys, and they won't run shootouts.
So they'll just grudge race?
That's it.
That's boring.
That is it. They will. It doesn't matter if it's a 4-car shootout. They will not get in it. And when we talk to them, and we're like, guys, you know, like, come on now. I mean, there's, you know, $10,000 on the line in this class. I'd have to make 4 or 5 passes to get to that 10 grand when I can just go race this guy for 10 grand, make 1 pass.
That's so weird to me. Grudge racing is so, to me, grudge racing is so boring. I don't want to go back and forth with a group of people for more than a second arguing about anything, any stipulation, anything like that. I'll just deal with the class racing. I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me. That's so weird that people are
It's a different world.
Because down in Florida, we are very different than you guys are in the Carolinas and in Georgia, North Georgia. We don't have as much grudge racing. We don't have as much no-time racing. We don't have as much no-prep racing. It is such a different...
I feel like we are very much like a grudge racing like mecca in our area. Between
100%.
Darlington, Carolina, we've got tons of smaller tracks that people just don't even know about that are all through the Carolinas. We've got Orangeburg, you know, stuff like that. And these class racing at a lot of these tracks just isn't even a thing. These tracks open the gates on weekdays, and it is just grudge race after grudge race after grudge race. And that's what I grew up around. You know, that was going to the track, going to Carolina Dragway. Growing up, I'd go to, you know, Mike Hill events, and, you know, we still to this day, and he's still out there. He puts on some of the biggest events there are out there. But that was the world we were used to, you know, getting out and going doing class racing. It is completely different.
Yeah, because even like Orlando sometimes does grudge events, but they're so uncommon, and everybody's on the starting line. You got to drive through a group of people to get from the burnout box to the staging lanes, like to the light. You have to actually like run people over.
There are races in our area. Jamie Triggerman, he's putting on one that, you know, these guys. It's one of the first races of the year, and it's is this at Orangeburg, Matt? This is at Orangeburg, first ass cutting of the year is what it's called. And it is, there's hundreds of grudge races that just get locked in months before. And this is what everybody shows up for. I mean, from the spectator side, you know, everybody's going because there's this grudge race, there's this grudge race.
And it's radial tire, not no prep grudge racing. Like, there's so many different styles of racing. And I try not to even get involved in those ones because they're just not what I do. I try for the radial tire shootouts.
That's kind of my problem with all this is the more I get around it, the more involved in all of it I want to be. You know, we actually just recently kind of dialed back our name from Streetcar Bragging Rights to just Bragging Rights. And that's because we want to be able to open up to doing more events. You know, I want to be able to potentially down the road do a drag and drive bragging rights, a no prep bragging rights. And these are worlds that I haven't even been a part of, but you know, that's, like I said, it's kind of my issue with the promoting stuff. I really want to be involved with as much of it as possible. It's hard for me to focus on, let's just do this.
Well, once you understand promoting, you can kind of promote any event, any style, where most of these new promoters don't really get it. And I'm sure most of their first events will take out the new promoters right on the first event as they attempt to and lose their ass.
Yeah,
I've heard of quite a few that are like, oh yeah, I've talked to a bunch of promoters, and most of them said basically their first event they lost their ass and had to
We were pretty fortunate. Our first one, we actually didn't. I was to this day is the only event that we've put on that made money.
Oh,
We weren't crazy in the green, but we were in the green. And that's honestly more than anything came down to our sponsors. Our first year, we picked up so many local sponsors that, it made it to where 90% of our payouts were covered. We were pretty much almost in the green before, spectators even showed up.
oh, cool.
So outside of that, our last couple events, we throw so much into it. It's not one of the, if we opened the gates and just said, come on, and didn't do 90% of the stuff we did, we'd make a killing at this point.
Yeah. I was really impressed watching some of the photos and videos from your burnout contest just by the amount of detail there was on the branding of yourself, the scoring, the people you had there. Like, everybody got like a box with some stuff in it. I was like, oh, that's that extra like 20%.
Yeah,
that most people wouldn't do.
We definitely try to go over the top. We started doing stuff back at my shop. We started doing pretty much like car meets, and the whole game plan was whenever we started all this stuff, we were going to do like 3 or 4 of them a year. It was going to be like a seasonal thing. And right from the rip, we had a band, we had food trucks, and we had a fireworks show. This is at an industrial complex where we hired a professional fireworks guy to come, shoot fireworks on a Friday night with a parking lot just full of a bunch of people. And our burnouts for kids, our first burnout competition was actually at a shop also. I mean, it was, luckily the shop, the business behind us, they had a bunch of concrete jersey barriers. They held sod and stuff in it. So we rented a forklift, went back there and borrowed all their concrete jersey barriers and set them up in the parking lot to have this little area. And
well, at least you started with safety. Most of these burnout contests start with like, oh, it's just an open parking lot and everybody's standing close to it.
Yeah, that's a big one for us. I mean, we know going into everything that we're not in a position where if somebody gets hurt, insurance is very expensive for all this stuff. And it can very quickly with these cars, caliber cars. Our last burnout competition, we got guys out there like Adam Kelly that, these are full-blown methanol vehicles that are pushing that to the absolute limit.
Yeah, people don't realize those are serious burnout vehicles. They are not just like your
we had to have a talk with, just our guys, our volunteers, like, hey, I know you're on fire extinguisher duty. I know I told you that, if you see a fire, you get out there and you put it out, but this car, we got to be a little more careful with.
Well, most methanol fires you can't actually see. Some methanol, they add additives in it so you can see it, but a lot of methanol you can't actually visibly see when it's on fire. So it gets pretty scary.
Yeah, that was definitely, even while doing this event this year, and we take a ton of precautions, to make sure that everybody is safe. Nobody's standing in an area where anything can go wrong. But at the end of the day, it's just like being up on a starting line. If a car blows up, sends a rod, anything's possible at any point. So we do just about everything that we can, and we're kind of just, it's a cross your fingers kind of thing until it's over.
Yeah, you kind of have to hold your breath a little bit as some of the badass cars really go out there and they're 10,000 RPM big block and you're watching the blower sing and you're like,
Yeah, we actually, so the burnout competition this year we did out on the center of the racetrack. So we, these guys are either, some of them getting inches away from the wall, some of them unfortunately slap the wall pretty good, and things go flying.
As they do. I've been around quite a few burnout contests and I've seen the danger pretty firsthand, and it usually takes a learning curve, which a learning curve on an event can be dangerous, where the first one, you have hardly any fencing or jersey barriers or anything, and then you don't really have enough events for a learning curve of safety.
Yeah, our first one, even with the jersey barriers, going back, just looking at it, it was like, wow, that was really dumb. We had people literally on the jersey barriers. They were right there. And granted, these were not your normal jersey barriers. These were the big, concrete block ones. but we let people get way too close. We didn't give a timer. There was, you kind of just went till you didn't want to go anymore. So still to this day, like the asphalt beside one of my shops is just, I mean, there's holes this deep from guys that would blow the tires and just, I mean, they were letting their rims eat until they weren't there anymore.
Well, aluminum wheels are scary. That gets dangerous. The gaps, Jersey barriers have this gap in the bottom area where things will come out and launch out. Like I said, I've seen it all. I've actually talked with Garrett about him making like a this is the way you should do it type of thing for burnouts, and kind of just put that out there. Yeah. Because people are doing them and they're not as safe, so it almost dampens the whole sport if people are doing it dangerously.
Definitely needs to be some regulation to it. We've seen a lot of people that, are starting to do these because they just have concrete pads in their backyard. And, it's obviously it's better than takeover, out in the middle of an intersection. But, we're at a point now where we have a fire extinguisher sponsor. This year we had 30 fire extinguishers out there ready to go. We have certain people that are in place. We're teching these vehicles to the point where we're going and we're checking to make sure there's no wheel weights. It's little stuff like that. And, we have a pretty strenuous rule set that we send out to all the drivers that they know what they're coming into for tech. But those things have to happen. Especially you're seeing that when there's more money on the line, people are willing to send it a lot further. These burnout vehicles are becoming insane. I mean, Adam Kelly is a prime, number one, when it comes to this is
they're hard on their stuff for sure.
And I mean, they show up to win. So
when you put up money, people are going to show up to win that money.
That is true.
It's kind of the inevitable deal. And obviously Skids for Kids, they go all over the country. They do that. Shout out to them. They have a bunch of burnout cars that show up all over the place. And you guys have a similar kind of vision on your...
Yep. So, yeah, we actually had Andrew out as one of our celebrity judges this year. We had 10 celebrity judges during it. That was something that I talked to him a little more about it, trying to get, he's definitely making a hard push for trying to get a majority of the U.S. kind of on the same page with their burnout competitions. It benefits everybody when there's rule sets that are similar. Saw it whenever, these things first started coming. It was people that won them were people who destroyed their shit the most.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. And then, you got guys that they don't want to wreck their vehicles, and they stop showing up because they know if they don't crash their car into a wall, they're not going to win the competition.
Yeah, crashing and fires should be a DQ. You're not winning, 100%, and they're starting to be.
Yeah, that was a big thing that we went over with our judges. And I will say we do not have, a exact criteria. Whenever we go into it, we tell the judges, like, hey, look, driver's skill, their tip in, the amount of smoke, the show that they put on, we want you to take all this into account. But, this is personal opinion on how you feel they did. Only thing that we ask, if they hit the wall, a light brush where it's like, wow, that was cool, just maybe a little paint swap is one thing. Whenever you actually hit a wall or, you get yourself in a situation where it's dangerous also.
Yeah, if you prove that you have proximity and you know where your car was and you just
very different
slightly touch the wall versus crashing.
So we're very vocal to the judges and the drivers. If you hit a wall, your points are going to be deducted heavily, and that's not what we want.
How do you handle the drag racing tech? Because that's a tricky one because these cars are so easy to go so fast, and safety is usually the third priority on drivers, and it's so, especially a no-time class. I mean, you really can't safety tech a no-time class because technically you're not supposed to know how fast they're going.
Yep. So one of the biggest...
And if you're at an NHRA track, then you have different deals that you have to deal with.
So Carolina Dragway is a NHRA sanctioned track, so we do have to, abide by that. And luckily, the newer rule set that has came out because the NHRA has realized that a lot of these cars are getting faster, but a lot of the newer cars are also much safer already from the factory. So, that works to our favor. But one of the messages that I get the most in my inbox and the bragging rights inbox is, hey man, my card does this. I don't have this. Am I good? And we turn away people all the time. You know, we don't want people showing up to where, you know, it's huge liability for us. And, you know, we don't want we don't want a big accident at any of our events. And when we go, yeah, this car just made an 8-second pass and he has no cage, I mean, that's on us. You know,
Yeah, he's
it's
in
on
a
us.
t-shirt and jeans.
It's on us to allow that. So tech is actually something we made a lot of changes to compared to how I think any event is ran. We have a class official for every single one of our classes. So there is a person that is in charge of their class. And the way we do this is, that was something that other events that we went to that we felt needed to be changed, was how tech is done and how much time tech is for a lot of events. I know you've sat in a tech line for probably way too long, multiple times.
Yeah, it's been scrutinized my fair share.
So what we do is we actually have all the tech cards filled out ahead of time, and everybody has a driver packet. You know, Summit is one of our sponsors, so we have everything in a bag. We have their class stickers, their card numbers, their tech cards ready to go, and we operate tech as a drive-through. So you come in, you never get out your car, you tell them your first and last name. They have everything, you know, in alphabetical order. They bring it up. They hand you your tech card. You sign off on your tech card. They hand you your bag. And then this is where we have separate lines once you get past this point for each individual class. And your class official is there. So you'd pull up, you know, say you're in the heavyweight class, you would go through the single file line with everybody. You would get your stuff, and then you would pull into your lane.
Yeah.
Your class official is then now teching your car. And the big thing with that is it's not one person trying to tech 350 cars in a single day. We now have 9 people that are teching just their class.
Yeah.
And it does wonders. You know,
That's where most events also cap out at, is 300,
350 is usually about that.
It's usually about what any track can run in one event.
So now you've got, you know, let's say you're in the all motor class. You've gone through tech. You are now with your class official. You have somebody to communicate with.
Yeah.
Now for the remainder of the weekend, you're looking for the guy that is wearing, you know, every class has a specific color coordinated car number, tech card, and the class official is wearing, you know, a shirt that is color coordinated with it.
Okay.
You're also immediately getting put into a WhatsApp group where you're not in a WhatsApp group with everybody. You're in a WhatsApp group with your class official.
Yeah, so they can tell you when your class is up and stuff like that. Man, those little things like that are so important to racers. Just the simple stuff.
Yep.
It's like that little bit extra, and I hate when events don't do that. Like, the WhatsApp stuff is not that tough. It's a QR code, and you can put people in a group pretty quickly.
We're actually working on a Streetcar Bragging Rights app that is going to, you know, you're going to be able to do those things within it. There'll be a messaging type service. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have it ready for this year's event, but we are making a hard push to get everything done to at least have it, you know, for 2025 to be done.
That's cool. That'll be a cool breath of fresh air to drag racing in our not decaying, but like dinosaur-esque sport where everything's hand filled out. Like, if anybody's ever seen like a timing system at a track, they're like DOS.
I got
the oldest system you've ever seen in your life.
I got to operate one at our track for the first time about a month ago, and well, it's been a little longer than that, but it blew my mind.
Surprisingly outdated.
It was very mind-boggling. You know, there's no mouse. I'm up there, you know, Alt F1, Alt F2, shift this, and you're on a black and white screen or a green and black screen.
Things are printing out like tick, 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 like it's freaking old ass.
Yeah, me and a buddy of mine are actually currently discussing, you know, what can be done about that. And, you know, we've got a couple people involved that, you know, there's got to be a better way. There's
like one guy that can service that stuff too. Like, if you have an issue, it's like this one dude that does it for the whole country.
Everything is...
It's crazy. The first time I heard about that, they're like, oh yeah, like we're just trying to get a hold of the guy. I'm like, the guy? Like, that's it?
Really close friend of mine that he knows absolutely nothing about drag racing. He helps out a lot of the events, and I showed him the system, and he's a very tech savvy guy, and he was just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening right now?
It's concerning.
No, we saw
Bradenton's had lightning strikes that take down their systems quite a few times, you know, like it happens, like the lightning hits a tower, a timing system, and suddenly got some burnt up parts.
Yeah. We've discussed new ways of doing things, bringing in some type of software where, you know, you maybe have an RFID scanner that is in the water box, and you have a chip or something, you know, on your windshield where it gets scanned, or a barcode that gets scanned as you come through, and all your information about your vehicles, you know, already stored in there, so you don't have somebody sitting there on a computer upstairs typing it all in.
The announcers are reading cards, the back of a card, whatever you write on there. That's what the announcer knows about your car.
There's definitely a lot of things that, you know, I won't go into detail because I don't want anybody with a bunch of money running and doing it before us. But
if you got a bunch of money, don't get involved in this. There's other way more profitable things you can do.
But yeah, there's the timing systems at tracks. Definitely, we've got to figure out a way to kind of move with the times on those. And I will say, you know, the folk, you know, our ticketing site that a lot of people are starting to use. Michael over there, they're doing a lot of really cool stuff. They're introducing ways that, you know, we can have drivers fill out tech cards ahead of time and then integrate them into CompuLink systems where it's, you know, we're now shifting everything over. We're not having to fill out as much stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So
I know Garrett uses them pretty heavily, and there's like approval that they've built in for cars.
It's awesome. It makes our life 10,000 times easier.
He seems like, or whatever, whoever runs the FOTE seems like actual like car focused, not just like a random ticketing website.
So we used, like our first couple of events that we did, like at my shop, we used, I believe it was called Ticket Spice or something like that. And, you know, these are all great services, but they're just overall event focused. So we got on the FOTE and we set that up for the first time, and I mean it's amazing. It is very race centered. We can make it to where, like, one big thing that we do is we only, you know, most tracks allow 3 crew members per team. So I can actually, you know, we give crew members badges, you know, that allows them up on the line during the weekend during our events. But we actually set it up to where, you know, because of the FOTE, the way it works, we can have it set up to where if you don't buy a driver ticket, you can't buy a crew pass. So this is locked until you purchase this. It's little things like that that just make using the FOTE versus, you know, any other ticketing site way better, in my opinion.
You know who has a real... I don't know if you've been to World Cup, but they have a real strict badge policy.
They have a real strict badge policy.
Oh, man. Jason Miller's got them locked down tight. Like, they'll clip your badge if you're, like, they're by class. And if you're up there and it's not your class, they'll clip it. And if you get, like, 3
many clips, you're out.
You're out. They'll take the badge and you're done.
They do that with media also. So media,
you have certain zones
there's certain zones that you can be in. And, you know, if you're in a zone that you're not supposed to be in, they'll clip it. And if you get a certain, you know, too many clips, you're out.
Well,
it's a solid system.
Changed a lot too, because anybody can claim media and try to get in there.
Yeah, media's tough. I think that's one thing we also do a little differently. And, you know, this isn't to knock any event, but
knock the event. Name them.
We have a lot of media people that show up to our events, and we don't charge them. I don't think any person that is, you know, helping promote your event at no cost should ever have to pay to be there. And there's a line with that. You have to figure out who's media, who's not media.
And who's promoting versus just post their photos after.
Yeah. So
because posting the photos a week after doesn't help promote your event.
There's a lot of requirements for media at a lot of events that are crazy to me. I've seen a lot of events, and I think this is a very universal thing, so I'll probably catch a bunch of flack for this, but, you know, there is these events and these promoters require media turn over a very specific amount of photos, watermark free, you know, and if they don't turn over 300, 400, 500 photos from the event specifically to them without a watermark, then they can't get a badge the following year.
Oh, interesting.
And these same people are paying to be there. They're buying, you know, spectator tickets to come in the gate.
$100 tickets.
It's crazy to me. So we do not charge any media. Again, there is a vetting process with us. You know, you can't just send us an email and say, hey, you know, I have this Instagram and it has, you know, X amount of followers and I'm going to show up with my camera and go live. You know, I mean, obviously there is a line with what media is, and like you said, anybody can claim to be media at this point. But you know, the amount of growth that we've had so rapidly is very much due to the media. The people that come out and get us more exposure, they're posting pictures, they're saying where they were at, they're saying that they're going there this weekend, they're putting out schedules for the year and we're on it. These are the types of things
you try to get on their watermark instead of
exactly, you know,
the opposite way. You want your logo on the watermark with them.
And it's awesome, you know, a week or two after the event, whenever we start seeing, you know, just and the amount of photographers and videographers that come out that are all very different. You know, there'll be photos of the same exact car almost at the exact same time, and they are just completely different photos because this photographer has an eye for this photographer has an eye for that. One thing we actually incorporated into Streetcar Bragging Rights this year for the first time is we have at the very bottom of the ticketing link, the float, we have where you can add on a ticket for $10, and you can obviously add as many as you want, but it's a direct donation to every media person that we'll have at our event.
Oh, that's cool.
So, you know, I wish we could pay everyone. Obviously we can't. If we have, you know, 50, 75 media members show up, we can't pay everybody for their photos. And I wish we could because it'd be awesome, but so this is something that we started, and I hope more people will kind of get on board with this, and I hope our racers that are continuing to sign up continue to buy these tickets, because at the end of the day, if we have 50 media people out there and we're able to hand them each, even if it's $50, you know, if it covers a little bit of gas, the media guys and girls that come to our events, some of these people travel 10 hours, you know, and they're doing it on their own dime. They're not getting paid. So we feed them.
Some of them are good enough to get sponsors or not good enough, but good enough at talking to sponsors to get sponsors.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that, you know, are.
But some of them don't even have that ability to make those.
We have tons of them that come out, and you know, and some of them they don't even have a care to do that. You know, they don't want a bunch of sponsors on their photos and stuff. They solely just really enjoy doing it, and they want to come out and, you know, take pictures at the events. There's others that are trying to, you know, build up, get more clientele.
An early and current Motion Raceworks things that they've always done that I always thought was the best marketing move was having Mike Prater out there taking all these photos and putting up just mass albums of Motion Raceworks watermark photos of everybody's car. So anytime anybody posted the photo, there was no like a watermark across it where it was stopping the photo, but it was just Motion Raceworks right on the bottom. And I think that was like a huge marketing move on their part. It was genius on their whole deal, but that was kind of an early thing I noticed Motion doing. The big hot button though is live feeds. I really enjoy a live feed at a race, especially I understand the local thing. You don't get people there. I don't think that's exactly true, but there's a lot of discussion about live feeding events.
I'm very I don't know how to put this. I stand on the line with that. I think that it's very dependent on the event, what type of event it is. You know, we had Flow Racing get on board with us for Streetcar Bragging Rights last year, and that was huge for us. When you're especially new and you can say, hey, you know, Flow is streaming our event, that was huge. It was a really big deal, and I think that it did us way more good than bad. I think you have drivers that whenever they find out that there's a big streaming partner, that they classify in their head as a bigger event. So, you know, that helps. I don't know where that line is of where somebody goes, I'm not going to show up to the track today because I can sit here on my phone and watch it.
I have personally been in situations where, you know, I'm 15 minutes from Bradenton, but I can't go to the track 3 days in one weekend.
Yeah.
So I'll just watch one of the days at my house while I'm doing some stuff, and then go one of the days where that helps with me. But then sometimes where there's no streaming, I won't even end up making it to the track. Unfortunately, there was a situation in one of the local tracks that were very anti-live feed, saying no live feed, you got to show up in person. But then I don't think attendance was very good either. And that kind of is where you get into that boat where do you blame the live feed anymore, or is it just promotion
itself? Yeah, I've had this conversation with 100 people, and I really just don't know. I don't know that I have an answer. I don't, my opinion is that if you want to go to the racetrack, you're going to go to the racetrack. I don't think a live feed is going to stop you for the most part.
Well, and Flow does pay a little bit, from what I've heard, to events.
Yes.
As well.
Yep. So obviously, the bigger the event, the more money they can generate, for ad revenue. And, if somebody, your event is going to bring in just subscribers, because that's a big one. Whenever, for the longest time, World Cup and FL2K was the only reason why I would subscribe to Flow, and I would get on there specifically for that. So it's one of those things, the more you can do for them, obviously the more they can help out with that. But as long as there's streaming services that are offered for our events, I'm going to continue to push them. I'm going to continue to try to have those partners. I don't think at any point, especially in the near future, that that's going to be something that I would go, no, we don't want this. We want people to show up. We think this is hurting, spectator count. So,
yeah, there's no live sporting event that says we're not going to show you it live. You're going to have to show up at the stadium.
That's that was one of the big ones that I didn't even think about it for quite some time. I was very like, oh man, there's all these people going live, and I've seen it. I've seen it with grudge races where somebody will go live on the starting line, and you'll look at the feed and there'll be 700-800 people on that feed. And I'm like, oh wow, like how many of these people were reliant on that and didn't show up? But like you're saying, the biggest sporting events in the world are all televised, and they're selling out stadiums still.
You have to, in my opinion, a promoter has to make the event so good in person that yes, the live is great, but the in-person experience is just so much better that you're just mad that you're not there and it's the next best thing. Not, oh, the live is actually better because, I don't have to be there for everything. You have to compete with the live.
Yeah, for sure.
In a way to make that experience so much better. And I think that's where a lot of promoters don't realize is sitting at a racetrack for 9 hours to watch 300 cars go down or whatever it is, some of these radial races where 50% of them actually don't get down. It's pretty nice to watch the live.
You got to do more. We all got to do more. We've got to find a way that I joke around and I don't call it downtime. I call it tractor time. And that's, when the tractor's going up and down, it's like we got to find a way to make sure that during that period, it's not just dead, and I don't know, NHRA has been picking up on this. NHRA has a DJ now, so,
that would make me stay home 100%.
But, incorporating...
that would keep me away from the track.
I know your views on music, but, for the most part, people, it's something else to kind of keep them involved whenever there's not anything else going on.
No, I get that. There's got to be something in between because the cars, you can't rely on them enough because it's this variable that may not work out quite well enough. A little bit of drizzle could cause a 4-hour delay, 3-hour delay. Yeah, it's not huge, but there goes everyone. Granted, events don't care because they already paid for the spectators. The spectators already paid anyways.
When you think about big sporting events, like the NFL, stuff like that, baseball, when is there huge downtime? It's not really a thing. There'll be injuries on the field that, will go into timeouts and stuff like that. But, motorsports in general, and it's not just drag racing. It's, it's all types. We saw it with what the F1 did this year. It was a manhole cover or something and then the next thing you know, like a whole day is canceled.
And NASCAR is figuring out a way to make their events more consumable.
Yep.
They're trying to either shorten the races, they're trying different stadiums. They're kind of grasping to make their events more consumable.
Yeah, baseball is running into the same thing. You know, if anybody's a baseball fan, they're trying to speed.
I don't think anybody's a baseball fan. I think you're safe.
They're really trying to speed up, you know, the game, and it's because we all, as a whole, our attention span is just getting shorter and shorter. And it's obviously, in my opinion, due to social media. You know, we're now watching, you know, Facebook Reels and stuff like that, TikToks that last 10 seconds, and then we're on to the next. So, you know, you getting, like I said, getting somebody to a 4-hour baseball game is becoming tough for them. How do we get people to stay at a 9-10 hour race event all day, and then we ask them to come back 2 days in a row?
That's where it's really tough. I know Streetcar Takeover was kind of one of the early ones to coin the one-day event, and that helped them in what they're doing. But it doesn't work in all events, of course. I mean,
there's downfalls to it.
Donald Long, he does 9-day events. You're there for what seems like a month, some of these events.
Yep. So, and I mean, where there's pros and cons to it, you can see it firsthand. You know, Streetcar Takeover at ZMAX in Charlotte last year. It's a 1-day event, well, 2-day event. You know, they had their Friday night stuff, but weather comes and they don't have a lot of time to work with. You know, that's where your downfall is. But, you know, like you said, Donald, this last year at No Mercy, we had terrible weather multiple days, but because you got multiple days to work with, you're able to try to split the schedule, squeeze things in.
Yep.
And
I think also that's important too, is events need to see what the weather's going to do and change before the weather does come in, because I've seen events where they're not proactive
last minute.
and then they react to rain, and now they're kind of screwed. Even this weekend is dating this now, but this weekend is U.S. Street Nationals, and they're finishing a race from a month ago.
Yep.
They have to finish the back half of Pro Mod.
Yep.
And
we actually just left out there and was talking a while about it there, you know, so, and unfortunately for them, only 3 of the 4 cars are actually on the property and going to be there, you know, because they were down to semifinals.
Yeah.
And they really have to change up their whole game plan with everything too, because they're going to actually finish that during qualifying for this event. So they're going to run their semifinals and their finals during like Q2 for this event.
And then that also ruined what can happen with rules, because now the cars, it was like an in-between rules changes and stuff. So like the cars are kind of in a weird spot. I mean, it kind of works out for them. Only 3 out of the 4 cars did show up, so you're a little bit more likely to win. But it makes the race weird also for spectators. How is a spectator, just some random guy that is a casual viewer, going to understand that Snowbirds he may have not even watched is now finished at U.S. Street Nationals?
Yeah, that's one of those you have to have a really good announcer in place.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, you've had him on the show. Derek Putnam has been doing our events from the beginning, and hopefully we keep him around for as long as we can. But it was actually really funny. I didn't know Derek before our first Streetcar Bragging Rights. I reached out to a close friend that was, you know, she's in the drag race community. I said, hey, send me some names. Like, I don't know announcers. You know, send me some names, and I'm going to start making some phone calls.
There's not that many.
There's not a lot. I was sent 3 names, and Derek was one of them, and Al Tucci was one of them, and I honestly don't even remember who was third on that list. But because Derek was on the top of my list, I actually reached out to him first, and me and him had I'm pretty sure it was like an hour-long phone call. And when I got off the phone, I was like, I don't even need to call Al.
Yeah.
Like, Derek's the man for
100% Derek.
We're good.
Yep.
So
Al's great, but yep.
Yep.
I don't blame you on that. And he's kind of been forced to retire from racing because his announcing has been so high demand.
Yep.
And he's a great announcer, but also there's a high demand with a low supply of announcers. There really is not that many.
Yeah, I saw that Derek just announced that he's going to be at Texas 2K this year. He's doing FL 2K.
It's always been Fabian at TX2K. I think he's stepping back from announcing a little bit, so less people now again. It's just crazy. Like, there's not that many.
Yeah, going back to weather, though, that is
every promoter's least favorite word.
It's so wild, man. You know, we don't even say we call it the R word. Like, we don't even say it. It's just we don't bring it up. We don't talk about it, and it's just this crazy superstition with everything where we're just like, you don't look at the weather, You don't check your phone, but you have to be proactive about it. And we learned firsthand. So we did our first 3-day event, Streetcar Bragging Rights, last year back in May, and we caught some really bad weather on our second day. So middle of the day, this is when the majority of our qualifying is going on. So we end up canceling the day, and we sat down really quickly, and we rewrote our entire schedule. And one thing we take very seriously is our scheduling. Our scheduling for all 3 days of our events is wrote out in like 5-minute increments. And our entire group knows if we're 10 minutes behind, and that's another reason Derek is the man. He communicates with us because he has our schedule, and he's like, hey, you're 20 minutes ahead here. You're 30 minutes ahead here. Hey, you're falling a little bit behind. This is where you need to speed up. This is where you need to slow down. But luckily, we were able to rewrite the schedule. We missed no qualifying. We were able to knock out everything. We started a little bit earlier on Saturday, and we're able to finish everything. But it's a huge fear. I mean, there's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of sponsor money.
Well, racers usually ruin schedules. And I get on my fellow racers about this all the time. I'm like, you guys need belly pans. Make sure your shit's not leaking. Try to get down the track. Pull off to the side. Like, the simple stuff.
Well, even not just that. Them getting to the lanes.
Yeah.
It is a wild thing that a lot of people don't realize that, when you're making calls. And with us doing the WhatsApp groups and stuff like that, I think we are able to speed up a lot of that. Communication is key whenever it comes to getting people to the lanes. But you're always going to have, your 1 or 2 people that they're trying to buy a little bit more time. They're trying to cool down a little bit more. They're doing this or doing that. And, it can throw you off schedule quick.
If you're talking 5 minutes, 5 minutes disappears quick at a racetrack. 45 minutes disappears quick. And the other flip side is, as racers, there's some things that slow us down that I get frustrated by. I tell everyone this, that there needs to be dedicated lines at the food for racers. Just if you got a racer band, maybe a different window.
Just a complete separate
it's tough.
window.
You can, like, I've gone all day without eating at plenty of racetracks because I can't get food and I don't have time. And, not all the time. Usually I go out first round and I have time, but
yeah, we try to.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, we actually, all of our events too, we have a hospitality area, and it's trackside. And luckily at Carolina, we're able to really pull this off really well with how things are set up. But you're able to go inside the tower, and cool down. We have snacks and drinks, throughout. We stage coolers and stuff in the staging lanes that are specifically for racers. Because our first event was in March, and it was a terrible mistake. It was 100 degrees outside. And like I said, when we put our survey out, the number one thing that whenever it would get to the end and everyone was like, we'd ask, what's the one thing you can change? And I'm like, don't have a fucking race in the middle of the summertime.
I usually avoid ZMAX for that same reason.
Yeah, I went last year. It's toasty.
It's hot. They have a lot of concrete.
A lot of concrete.
A lot of asphalt, a lot of concrete tracks, a lot of heat. It's a great track, but it's too hot. So I usually try to, and that's just stuff that you have to deal with. We're in Florida, so I'm used to racing in the heat. If you're not racing in the heat and humidity, you're just not racing. So you kind of have to deal with that. But for up north, you also have a slimmer area of racing. And then there's only so many weekends that you can race.
Yep.
So you have to talk to other promoters. You can't just schedule on top of promoters. Like you're saying March, you can't just schedule on top of TX2K.
Yeah, so we're, I think we're crossing over a bridge now to where we are getting popular enough to where we don't have to wait as long to put out our schedule. When we first started, there's obviously that huge fear of we're going to put our dates out and then someone else is going to take it. And we're the new event. We're the little guys. Nobody's been to our event yet, and people aren't going to show up. So, I talk to promoters as much as I can. I talk to Victor as much as I can. I talk to Justin and Chase. I'm always trying to find out what people's schedules are as quickly as I can. So, there's 52 weekends in a year, and there are hundreds of race promoters.
And you guys probably only get 20 or what 30 that are actually good enough to race.
I mean, our track is not a lot of tracks I guess in the area are closed throughout the year, but our track closes for I think 3 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So we lose those 3 months. The middle of summer is something we don't want anything to do with anymore. And then we really, I'd say the big three, that in my head are FL2K, Texas 2K, World Cup.
And we're talking big three just because they overlap with your rule set, not attacking any other.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
they're single day events, and then the one that we look at also is obviously Streetcar Takeover. Mm-hmm. I would prefer to not have a single race even if it's on the other side of the country while Streetcar Takeover is going on, because we want those guys to come to our event.
Yeah.
Hell, we want Justin and Chase to come to our event too. So, but it's tough. I mean, and unfortunately, a lot of race promoters, even those smaller guys, they don't want to communicate. It's one of those things that it's weird to me because, if there was this open, line of all these guys that, would just communicate and talk to each other a little bit more, everybody would do a lot better. We see it all the time having multiple tracks in our area where these guys will intentionally put a race and it'll be the same type of classes on top of each other just because they don't like each other. It's like, what are you accomplishing?
Yeah, you're just trying to split the group of racers.
I mean, and these tracks will be an hour apart.
Yeah.
And it's, that's something that when we first got into everything, I was, reaching out to Justin as much as possible, reaching out to Victor, reaching out to Chase, trying to have this open line of communication. And, obviously, they're not as much worried about my date as I am worried about theirs.
Yeah.
But, we want to work with everybody as much as possible.
But even too close can still be an issue. If there's only, like, FL2K, there's only a week after your event is only a week before or after your event, then people decide, they're like, well, I'm not going to go break my shit if I got to go to this race or that race, or the travel. So, you have to even take that into account. You can't even just same weekend. You also have to take,
We saw that so we were very fortunate to be able to introduce one of our classes at Donald's No Mercy last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we approached him with that, got on board with that. And unfortunately, with No Mercy and Lights Out, all these guys are pretty much, they have the same dates year round. They typically fall within the same type of weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
FL2K and No Mercy are pretty much on top of each other pretty often.
Yeah.
Or they're like a week apart.
But they're different cars.
Yeah. And so, that was something that we ran into. Hell, as soon as I posted about it, Victor was in my inbox. He was like, the hell, man?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, man. And that was one of my mistakes where it wasn't something that I was even looking at. And then, my thought process was, well, it's FL2K. It's, it's a little south. Those guys will also maybe come and race with us next week. And that was the case for a few people. But there's also, I can't do 2 weekends in a row. I can't travel 2 weekends in a row. I can't, be racing.
And FL2K is a long event. It's not a one-day event. Yeah. If it's one day and then another one day, you can maybe swing that. But when it's like a long event and then No Mercy is a long event as well, it's hard to swing those two.
Our first Streetcar Bragging Rights was within a 30-day window, 35 days of Texas 2K. And in my opinion, when we first started, I was like, that's perfect. That's not really going to interfere. And I was blown away by the amount of people. And obviously, Texas 2K is going to take priority, until we reach a point to where we're at that level, getting to that level. I do think we're rapidly getting there. But when someone reaches out and goes, yeah, man, I'm going to Texas 2K and I'm not coming to Streetcar Bragging Rights to hurt my car and then have 25, 30 days to fix it.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect to it. Just like you said, even being somewhat close is also a bad thing.
Yeah, I think unfortunately fortunately and unfortunately, we're coming to a point where people are just going to not have to worry as much about events. There's 25 drag and drives this year. There's so many streetcar classes. you're almost just going to have to get to a point where as long as it's multiple states away, it kind of is what it is. Yeah. You can't really cater to every single event, or else some promoter sitting at home right now may never have his event just because he can't figure out a date because he's so worried about, oh, there's a drag and drive 6 hours from me. Yep. So you kind of almost have to just get to a point where bite the bullet. You have to do it. There's going to be cars that won't travel 4 states away.
There's ways of doing it still where, you're communicating, and it's, I went through this, honestly, with our race that we're having right now. Our small tire class, same weekend at Rockingham, there is going to be a small tire class up there with Carolina No Time. And it was just one of those, like, it was not really either one of ours fault. We basically released our schedules around the same time. We started semi-promoting it around the same time, and then it was, oh man, this is going to fall on the same weekend. Yeah. We actually got on the phone. I got on the phone with Lance, and the big thing was like, look, no hard feelings. It's, we're set, your date's set, my date's set. I'm going to promote my race, you're going to promote your race, but there doesn't need to be we're intentionally trying to screw each other here. And I think that's a big one, even whenever that stuff does happen, because it's going to happen.
Well, like, FL2K is really close to World Cup, but FL2K is looked at a tester practice pre-event almost to World Cup for a lot of these cars. Like, they kind of shake down, they get some test laps in before World Cup. So it's, some people would have probably potentially saw that as competition, but they actually bounce off each other in a way that maybe people wouldn't expect, and
that's what's happening really well right now with Sick Week. I think there's probably 15 racers that are are going to be coming to Lights Out in our streetcar bragging rights class, but they're waiting to they're doing everything with Sick Week, and they're going to get through the week and then go from there before obviously they spend $200 on a tech.
I think I've said that to you before. If my car is not blown up, I'll try to make it. If I still have rods in the motor, I'll try to make it.
And that's, just bringing that up, that's something that we recently introduced too. So and our app is going to definitely help out with this, but we are doing what's called the Streetcar Bragging Rights Racer Credit Program. For us, when racers register on the FOAT, I don't think a lot of people realize how much help they are doing for us. It is huge. When we have information, all your information well ahead of time, we're handwriting tech cards, we're assigning class numbers, we're down to, we're trying to figure out how many food trucks we need, how many people are going to be there when people buy these tickets. So the biggest downfall, we're racers, we understand. I'm not going to buy a tech card and spend $200, $300, and then buy this and buy that for a class, a race that's 6 months out, because I'm going to go race other stuff. Shit's likely going to break, and now I'm out of this money. And that is a reality with, I think we all know this. When you register for a race event, you're not getting that money back. You just...
you've given them that money.
You donated to the purse. So...
Yeah, I'm signed up for TX2K in March, and I signed up months ago. Yep. And it's in Dallas. It's far. It's like 18-hour drive from here.
So what we've done is...
A 3-month-old kid. Yeah. It's a lot.
So what we've done on that is, as long as we know going forward a 2-week notice that you cannot make the race, we're going to issue you a credit. This isn't a refund, but this will be a credit for any of our events going forward. So if you break, if you're testing the week before and you break, you get to at least know that you can use that money for a tech card or entry. Even if it's just spectator entry. We are even opening it up to where that credit can be used for merchandise. So if you wanted to buy a shirt, hat, or anything like that from us. But we did that specifically because we need racers to register quickly. We need them to get registered as soon as possible.
It needs to fill up kind of right off the kick.
Because, I'm a prime example of exactly what I don't want people doing. I don't register for events until sometimes at the gate.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm bad about it. If we're going, even if it's something that's mapped out and planned out, if it's something in my head that I don't think is going to sell out, I'm just going to hold off.
I've went to plenty of events where I don't decide until 3 days before, maybe 2 days before that I'm going to go to the event. And of course, I'm not going to pre-register for every event. It kind of more just like, oh, it popped up, it works out, I can go, and I can go. I mean, when I went to Streetcar Takeover Darlington, I didn't know I was going to go until 2 days before. Kind of prime example, but I've never raced at Darlington, so I was like, oh.
Yeah, I actually saw you there.
Yeah, that was great. I love that track, and I know you guys do stuff there too, right?
Yeah, we had we did a small tire. Well, it was all around just a no time event. It was a 2-day thing. We did a no time small tire class and a no time overdrive class. That was actually our first time venturing outside of Carolina Dragway, and it was kind of a, let's see, if we can do this, hours and hours away. It was kind of a test for us, and fortunately for us, we really did very well when it came to the quality and the car count. Where we didn't do well at that event was sponsors. And we kind of knew this, but, even right now, we have so many local sponsors that make up such a big part of our event. And it's local tow companies. It is your part stores. We have a lady who sells cupcakes, and she throws us $1,000, almost every year. It's these people that have kind of been around since the beginning, local insurance agents, car dealerships, stuff like that. We knew when we went 3.5 hours away from home that there's no real benefit for them to give us any money. So we're now getting to a point where we're starting to get more, from these bigger companies, these bigger automotive companies. Guys like Luis with Fuel Tech, Doug with Motion. I mean, these guys, you see it everywhere. These are some of
they support racing, events, tracks, the whole nine. I prefer to buy from companies that actually put their money there.
These are the guys that, really we need to put them on a pedestal when it comes to these grassroots events.
If they don't have like a CEO, really, I'm all for it.
Yeah. No,
I know they have CEOs, but not the, there's typical guy in the suit.
Obviously sponsorships need to make sense. So we talk about this all the time, but we see guys, we see these companies, Fuel Tech, Motion, TBM, they're sponsoring the smallest events to the biggest events. Mm-hmm. That's huge. That's a big thing because it takes getting, those bigger sponsors for these grassroots events to grow. Without them, you're kind of dead in the water without sponsors at this point.
That's the smart way. For me, I avoid all sponsorship as much as I can, like the plague. Yeah. I try to, mostly because I don't like...
when you feel like you are, having to meet some type of criteria for what you do.
Yeah, I don't ever want to have... I've had one person, one time, they're like, man, could you do a little more? And I was like, I'm out. Sorry.
I get it.
I'll just pay for the part. Never mind.
I'm building a car now that I've taken a couple sponsorships on, and I've received probably $7,000 or $8,000 in parts, and it's one of those things where the race promoting stuff has really made it to where I haven't been able to finish this car and get it out, and there's a constant I feel terrible about it.
Yeah, there's that nagging feeling.
These luckily they're not on my ass about it, but it's like, man, you gave me a $6,000 part a year and a half ago, and my car is still 6 months out. So I totally get what you're saying. Sometimes it's like, is it worth it?
I know, and I've the difficulty also in part sponsorship is they all want the same size sticker no matter what they give you or what you do with them. If you pay cost, if you get free parts, if you get $10,000, if you get $500, the sticker's got to be the same size pretty much. So it's like gets finicky there as well because I feel like I'm giving another sponsor a disservice if he's sitting next to a sponsor that gave me 20% of what he did or helps me 20% as much as that other person that try to just avoid it all. And especially the corporate sponsors, I definitely try to avoid those ones.
Yeah, I'm waiting to the point where we're like drag cars are running, like the Fig Newton sticker across the windshield.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're not far off from that. Especially when I see like cars that are street racing that are covered in sponsor stickers. I'm like, that's so weird to me because I thought that was like the opposite of looking like NASCAR.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of companies, a lot of very big companies that you see it very often, and it's not just a sticker that's slapped on there. It is like a full sponsorship or whatever the case may be, and you're like, That's a touchy subject.
How is it promoting with Donald Long? He seems like a loose cannon at times. Is it fun?
So I think
I like him. I follow him on Facebook, and it's constant entertainment.
I think a lot of people don't understand that there is Donald Long and then there's Duck. And these are two completely different people. And one of them is a racer and, you know, a guy that loves this industry. And I'm not saying the other one doesn't, but the other guy is a race promoter. And he's promoting races. And he's going to get you talking in some type of way.
Mostly about Stevie Fast.
Mostly about Stevie Fast. And I mean, he knows. And a lot of these guys that are commenting on his post and, you know, replying to his videos, and they're feeding right into exactly what he wants. And a lot of them don't understand that. But it works. I mean, he's done this for 15 years now, and his events are some of the biggest in the country. And, you know,
fastest cars, fastest radial cars. I mean,
you have multi-million-dollar, you know, programs, race programs that, you know, are dedicated around his events throughout the year. So that's...
And I don't mean he's a loose cannon in a derogatory way. I actually like that, and I think it's fun for the industry.
You need it. I mean...
it's not a negative thing. It's actually a positive.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's definitely different.
Yeah.
But it works. And,
definitely works.
He's definitely figured it out. There's not anybody else that comes to mind when it comes to race promotion that does the stuff that he does.
No, definitely not. I mean, he's definitely the loudest mouth in race promotion. Well, we'll end it off there, man. You want to promote some of your events? You want to plug them a little bit here? I'll put whatever link you send me, I'll put in the description.
Cool. Yeah. So
the dates.
Our next event coming up is going to be our Streetcar Bragging Rights class at Lights Out 15. That's at South Georgia Motorsports Park in February 22nd through 25th. It is the first and only quarter-mile class, streetcar class that has ever been ran at any of Donald's events.
So they're going to turn on the quarter-mile boards for you guys.
Yep. So
throw off some fans. They'll be like, what's that number?
Yeah, it's definitely different. We do a cruise on the circle track, which is really cool. So this year there'll be a 30-minute cruise, and we quickly can separate who has a small fuel cell and who doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't make the cruise, you get disqualified.
It adds up quick. It'll make for cool photos too.
Yeah. So our big event is Streetcar Bragging Rights, May 9th through 11th at Carolina Dragway. It's a 3-day event. We have 9 different race classes. We are I'm going to say this, and if I'm wrong, definitely call me out on it, but I believe we are the only streetcar event period that is giving out NHRA Wallies to all of our winners. That is one thing that we've been super fortunate the last 2 years. All of our main classes, you leave as a class champion with an NHRA Wally.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So we got that one. A big one that we've made some slight announcements. We haven't put out a whole lot of it is our beater car bragging rights. It's going to be going down Friday, October 11th. Yeah, October 11th at during No Mercy 15. So that'll be at South Georgia Motorsports Park on the oval track. It is 25 teams, invite only. It's sponsored by Nitrous Outlet. Those guys are going to give all 25 teams a full nitrous kit with a 10-pound bottle to kind of use at their discretion. But,
yeah, Dave and those guys are good over there.
Yeah, so we'll be dropping some more stuff on that soon, but that one's going to be pretty fun.
Freaking cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm pumped to see the events grow and as things evolve. And
maybe you can make one.
I'll make one eventually. I'll do it eventually. It is on my list of to do. It's on my whiteboard.
You get a little bit of pass right now with a newborn.
Yeah, a little bit. I also don't have an engine in my car, man. Come on. Picking on a guy with no motor. Thanks for coming on. Bye.